Hey there, everyone. My name is Earl. I'm the owner of EK3 Technologies. I am Florida's go-to guru for cybersecurity. But today we're not going to actually talk about cybersecurity. Today it's going to be a little learning lesson on DNS. A very good friend of mine who is just starting out at being a web developer, and I'm excited for her about that. Uh, Reached out to me because I put a post on Facebook and said, listen, web developers, stop moving name servers because it breaks a lot of things. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put together a quick video so the new web developers understand the difference between web hosting and DNS hosting and understand a little bit about what DNS does and why it's very important. It's also very important not to just blindly change the name servers because that's what the web host told you to do. So let's get into it. I'm going to use GoDaddy. It's one of the most popular ones. You can find Dynadot. You can find SiteGround. All of them have some sort of DNS configuration that you can go to. Some of them will actually tell you that managing DNS is advanced, and what you should do is move the name servers. Pay no attention to that. Moving DNS is actually the easiest thing to do, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can mess up DNS, but just like everything with the computer and everything with internet, it's completely fixable. So let's get into it. What is DNS? So DNS, we take for granted the fact, it stands for domain name services, and we take for granted the fact that when we type in google.com in our web browser, that it goes to the website google.com. But what you don't see is in the background, when you type in google.com, your internet browser reaches out to the internet and says, okay, who has google.com? And the internet will come back and it will say google.com is located at 192.168.0. whatever, and that's its IP address. You have to keep in mind that while we use the internet as .com and .net and .org addresses, the internet on the back end is actually using what are called IP addresses or internet protocol addresses. They're very much like your street address. Maybe you live at 123 Main Street, but somebody doesn't want to figure out 123 Main Street. So they might say, I want to go to Susie's house. And so they'll ask DNS where Susie's house is, and DNS will tell them Susie's house is at 123 Main Street, and it'll direct your car there. You do kind of the same thing when you put favorites into Waze. You don't say, I always want to go to my work address, or I always want to go to my home address. Waze actually gives you a shortcut for work and a shortcut for home, and it already knows what address that is. Which, on a side note, it's a little, I feel like Waze, it's a little much for me to get in the car, and every time I get in the car to go somewhere, you tell me how close to home I am. That's a lot of temptation that a lot of people don't need, but I digress. So let's talk about DNS. So that's literally all DNS is doing. It is a roadmap for the IP addresses and the things that are happening in your domain. So there are two types of hosting, especially when you go to GoDaddy or if you go to SiteGround or any one of those things. So we're going to use the fictional domain of Jack's Cloud Solutions right here. But there are two types of hosting. There's web hosting, and web hosting is where you're hosting the physical files, right? That is the files that you are creating for a particular website. So if it's written in WordPress and you have to install WordPress, you're going to install WordPress on the web host. If you're creating HTML files and you're putting those HTML files out there on the web, you're creating those in the physical web host. But a DNS host can be completely different. So you can have a DNS host of GoDaddy, but a web host of Cloudflare, or a web host. That was a bad example because I don't think Cloudflare does web hosting, but if they do, I apologize. But you can have a web host of SiteGround, or you can have a web host of Dynadot. There can be multiple. Network Solutions is another one I can think of. There can be multiple different web hosting. But what's most important for companies is who has the DNS hosting and who owns the DNS, or excuse me, who owns the domain name. So our best practice in our business is we allow the end user, whether it be one of our clients or somebody that we're managing email for, we allow them to keep their website in, their domain name in their domain host. If we're doing a website for them, we're going to move their website to the web host, but we're going to keep the domain there. The reason for that is a couple of things. Number one, on a legal standpoint, they still own the domain name. So if there was a dispute between us and them, they physically still own that domain name and they can maintain it, and they can simply move it to another provider if they want to. That way, and we recommend that for everyone. That way, just in case, you never know with web companies who's up, who's down, who's not going to be around. So you don't want to lose your web address. So if you have a great web address, maybe it be, iamgreat.com, you don't want to give that web address up to a third party. So you want to make sure that it's there. Okay. Now, if we go into our domain and we're looking at our domain, we can actually go right into GoDaddy, We can go into GoDaddy and we can go into DNS Manage, okay? And we'll look under DNS and we'll have all these records down here. And all these records mean different things. So I'm going to go through what each one of them means. But we're also going to talk about name servers. So name servers is probably what I see happen the most. And that is that someone will come in and someone will have a domain, a web host, and the web host will be SiteGround or Network Solutions or something like that. And they will just come in here and they will change the name servers and they will move the name servers to the new hosting service. Now, what that does is that literally bypasses everything that's in the DNS records in the DNS host and moves the DNS host to the web host. Okay. So what that says, so what name servers mean is if I am looking at a particular domain and I go out on the web and I say, who has google.com, it looks for the name servers and that are going to give me all the information for google.com. Okay. So if the name servers are at GoDaddy, like these are here, if the name servers are at GoDaddy, then it's going to be the records that are in GoDaddy that is going to allow the information that I'm looking for. But if the name records are for SiteGround, then it's going to go to SiteGround and look for the same information. So in your DNS records, we're going to go back over there. In your DNS records, you're going to have multiple different kinds of records. You're going to have A records. You're going to have NS records, which are just name server records. You're going to have CNAME records. You're going to have text records, and you're going to have MX records. Yes, there are several different records that are out there, several different types of records. Those are the ones I'm going to talk on today. So if you're a web host and you need to go to, and you have hosting on some address somewhere, all you really need to do is change the A record. So the A record, also called the host record, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but all the A record does is say, when I go to, in this case, jaxcloudsolutions.com, anytime anybody puts anything in front of jaxcloudsolutions.com, I'm going to look for one of these 4 IP addresses. Now, the @ symbol in this instance, where it says name, the @ symbol means anything in front of jaxcloudsolutions.com. So anything in front of that is going to go to these 4 IP addresses. That's all those mean. So if we change web hosting, all we have to do is change the A record and move the A record to the IP address of our web host. It's as simple as that. You don't have to move name servers. You don't have to do any of that. You can simply come in, edit one record, and give it about 20 to 30 minutes, and everything will function as normal. Okay. Now, NS records are literally that. They are name servers. They're just listed here. You can't actually change them, but you can change them here in name servers. But You can't change them here in GoDaddy. Now, you also have CNAME records. And I see a lot of web hosts get CNAME records wrong as well. So let's talk about that for a moment. So if I go and I'm going to open up a quick text or a quick notepad, and I know this is getting a little long and I apologize, but bear with me for just a moment. So I'm going to open up a quick notepad and I'm going to present it to you. Okay, so we're going to look at this notepad. So when we're talking about CNAME records, so far we've talked about A records. So A records is anything at mywebdomain.com. Okay, so anytime I type just that, that's going to go to an A record. So in this case, we're talking about jaxcloudsolutions.com. So anytime I type jaxcloudsolutions.com, it's going to forward me to an A record. But now what I see all the time happen is a new web developer will have someone type www.jaxcloudsolutions, and suddenly it won't work. There's a problem, and they can't figure out why they can't get to Jack's Cloud Solutions from the www. And that's where CNAME records come in. So let's talk about CNAME records. CNAME records look for anything prior to Jack's Cloud Solutions. So here you'll see we have a CNAME record and we have www, and that should point back to our A record. So anytime, and in this instance, somebody's going to correct me in the comments, but in this instance, it does not, but there's a reason for that. But it should forward back to the A record. As a matter of fact, we can update that and we can say www should forward back to the A record. And there we go. That's what it should look like. So now what that says is anytime somebody types www.jaxcloudsolutions.com, it's going to go to this IP address. And you can do that with different things. You can say, for instance, let's say that you had a completely separate website, and that website was, let's do a CNAME record, and that website was employees, right, at jaxcloudsolutions.com. You can actually point that to a different location. So it could be anything that you wanted it to be, and you could forward that to a different location. But that's what CNAME records are. So you could do any kind of web host that you want. The other records you're going to have are actually called they're text records, but they're called SFP records. And I'm going to give you a quick SFP record here. So SFP, also called sender protection framework, excuse me. An SFP record is simply a text record, and that is going to show you, the text record is going to show you that email should come from this particular address. It tells you where the email comes from. Now, I get a lot of web hosts and a lot of MSPs that will call me because they our Barracuda has blocked them, or something has gone wrong, and Google is notorious for not letting you in because your SPF record is wrong. And so all that really is a a text record that tells every computer on the web that the IP addresses that you are sending to you are sending from. So if I go to DNS management, I'm going to add a new text record. I'm going to say text record, and it's going to be this is going to be the value, and it's going to be called SPF. Okay, it's going to be at. Okay. Now, at just means it's going to be for the domain, so we'll just leave that there. Okay. So this SPF record here tells me that this is the FPF and SPF, and we're going to accept email from the MX record. Okay. So actually, I did that incorrectly. So let me correct that again before someone corrects me on the interwebs. There should be an MX in there. This should say MX. But I will tell you this. So SPF records can get kind of hairy. So I recommend something like MX Toolbox, SPF Record Creator, just to make sure that you're doing it correctly. And the final record we're going to talk about today is an MX record. And so an MX record is literally, MX stands for mail exchange. So it is where email will go to. So if I wanted to send an email to this particular address, draxcloudsolutions.com, where am I going to send an email to? And I will send it to sntp.secureserver.net. Right? So that's what the MX record says. Some domains will have 2 MX records, some will not. If they have more than one, you'll see a priority of 10 and a priority of 20. So you have a secondary, a primary and a secondary MX server, so that you never lose email. But that's it. I hope this was helpful. I know it ran a little longer than I expected it to, but I wanted to make sure that everyone had as much information as possible. Put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to complain about people doing things on the web, and so I thought I would do this record of DNS Records Explained. I welcome your feedback, so put it right down there in the comments. Let me know what you think, anything we need to add, anything we need to subtract. I'd be more than happy to get a couple of experts together and let's put this together. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone have a great day.